Hello everybody and welcome back to Atria Studios. Today we're going to be working on the second part of our infinite runner. Now today, like I said, we are going to be creating the objects that are basically going to be obstacles to you. We're also going to be working on a respawn point as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now the first thing we want to do is of course import the script that we had from our previous tutorial. So I'm going to, let's do this. We're going to import new asset. Now, if you guys followed along inside my previous tutorial with the 2D platformer, we created a respawn script inside there. So I'm going to go over to that, and we're going to get that script. So we're going to go over to our, let's go interactions and damage area. Yeah. So we're going to just simply import the damage area. So we're going to hit import. Now obviously we are going to have to modify this script. So let's go ahead and open that up in Visual Studios. So we're going to pull this over once everything decides to, push forward a little bit. There we go. And what we want to do is we're going to go over to Solution Explorer. And we're going to find our script, which is our damage area. And we want to be able to simply make sure that we reset our character if we're... Well, no, actually, we don't even want to reset our character here. Yeah, actually, we do. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our character resets. So we're going to go over to our Game Manager script. So we're going to double-click this script right here. And we don't need to worry about these things. So we're going to just select that minus key so we don't have to see it. And we want to be able to set a respawn point, similar to how we did inside the previous tutorial. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to put a header. And this header we're going to simply say, let's say background settings. There we go. And down here, we're going to create another header. So let's do this, header. And what we're doing is we're creating some form of management for our inspector. That way it's easier for us to be able to distinguish what each individual area inside of our Game Manager script is used for. So right here, this one is going to be used for respawning. So we're going to say respawn. Then we're going to create a public transform called respawn point. And I want to put an underscore there. And boom, we're done. Now we need to create a public method, which we can call from anywhere, which allows us to be able to reset our character. So to do this, as we did inside the previous tutorial, we're going to create a singleton. So I'm going to do that. That's not how I spell singleton, but you know what I mean. So we're going to create a public static game manager. And we're going to call this instance. Then on void awake, we're going to say instance is equal to this, like so. So anytime we call this game manager instance, we'll be able to instantly call this without having to use a get component call function. Now we simply create a public, let's do a public void called respawn. So respawn. And we're going to say, now we need to get our player character, so let's go to our player. We're also going to create a singleton for our player character as well. So hashtag region singleton. And we're going to do a public static player. Call it instance. And then void awake instance is equal to this, like so. So now we can call this from anywhere. Then we're going to come over to our game manager. We're going to call our player .instance, and we're going to get his transform. So .transform .position is equal to our respawn position. So respawn point .position. So whenever we die and we call this respawn, we're going to basically move our character to that point. All right, so now since we have that done, we don't really need to worry about this area anymore. So we're going to go over to our damage area. So on this right here, we don't need this damage script right here, all we need to do is simply call our respawn. So basically, if it hits this, we're going to say game manager dot instance dot dot respawn. I sort of want to do an invoke function to where it's not immediate, but calling invokes from other methods is a little bit testy. We could do it though. Yeah, maybe we should do that. So let's do an invoke, and we're going to do respawn. Like so. Boom, boom. And we want to do that after like 1 second, I think. We're going to test that out, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, great. We'll just adjust it. Okay, so we have our damage area, we have our game manager, and we have our player script all ready to go. Let's head back over into Unity. Now, what we're going to do with this damage area is we're going to put this right behind the player. So whenever the player is pushed off screen, what's going to happen is that the player is then going to have to reset. They're going to have to respawn into a new position. So what we want to do first is create an empty game object for our transform, our respawn point. So right click inside your hierarchy, create an empty, and we're going to call this respawn point. We're going to reset everything by selecting these 3 dots over here, press reset, and then we're going to come over to the inspector or the project view, and let's see, where do we want this? We probably want it right above the player, and we could probably put it somewhere like here maybe. Yeah, that should work. Then we're going to grab our game manager. We're going to pull our respawn point right there. So now we have the ability to respawn, which is awesome. And let's go ahead and just drag this right here underneath the game manager. Okay, so we have our respawn point, game manager. Okay, now we need to set up a collision to where whenever we interact with it, we're going to instantly die. So let's create another empty game object. In fact, actually, let's create a 2D sprite. That way we can visually see it. So I'm going to drag this over here like so. I'm going to open this up right there. And let's go ahead and change this over to tiled like so. So, dang, so many updates. All right, let's change this up to maybe like 15, 20, 25. It doesn't really matter. 25 looks good. And let's do a width of 2. Next, we need to add a box collider. So we're going to do box collider. And we want it to be 2D. So I need to drop that down so I can see. So box collider 2D. And make sure we set is trigger. Then we're going to drag our damage area on there like so. And I want to double check and make sure that that is a trigger. So on trigger, perfect. Okay, so we now have that set up to where we're able to interact, but we need to set the size because right now the size is set to the scale versus being set to the size of the sprite, which is a 2 by 25. So we're going to go over to size, do 2 by 25, and you should see a green area around your object. I don't know if you guys can see it that well, so I could change the color for you guys. And you can see that little green area. That's what we're looking for, okay? All right, so we don't really want to see this, so make sure that it is off the screen, and that should be good. Let me take a look at the ground, make sure that the collision is where we want it to be. Nice. All right, so now since we have all that set up, let's go ahead and set up the objects that are flying at you. So we're going to create, should we do this in the game manager or should we do this as a separate script? You know what, we're going to do this inside the game manager just for simplicity's sake. So we're going to go over to our game manager and let's go ahead and create another header. So header. And this is going to be for our spawner. So we're going to call this spawner. Now for now, we're going to just make one spawner, but you can always set this up as an array and then call these at random points. So there is that option, but for now we're just going to simply call this the spawner as one simple transform. We want this spawner to move, but we're going to set that up as a separate script if we get to it. So for now, we're just going to leave it like so. So we're going to say, okay, we want to be able to spawn the objects, but we also want to be able to have a certain type of object spawn. So we can create something for our resources.load file, or we can create a public prefab folder here. That's up to you. I think that we're going to do, I think we'll do a public string, and we're going to call this obj to spawn. That way, whenever we put the name inside there, as long as it's inside the resource folder, then we'll be able to call it. All right, so let's go down here. We're going to create a private void called spawn obj, and then we're going to simply do this. So we're going to say instantiate. Actually, let's do create a game object called spawn, which is equal to instantiate. Should we do game object or should we do a rigid body? Yeah, we'll do game object. Why not? Let's. Actually, we could do. No, we're gonna do game object. So instantiate, and we're going to do that resource.load. So we're going to say resources.load, and let's go ahead and put in our string. So that would be underscore obj object to spawn, like so. And then we're going to say as game object, like so. Let me put that in full screen so you guys can see that. All right, so basically, we're pulling this object to spawn from our resources folder, and we're going to set that up right after we finish this script. We also want to be able to set up the location. Now, you could do this inside the instantiate function. I just find it easier to do it afterwards. It's a little bit simpler to actually understand. So we're going to say spawn.transform.position is equal to our spawner, so underscore spawner.position. Then we're going to say spawn.rotation or transform.rotation is equal to, actually we could just call it a transform. You know what, we're going to do that. We're going to change that to transform so we don't have to call these as often as we do. So we're going to just say transform. Then we could just erase that. Yeah. See, that makes things easier. So then we're going to set our spawner, spawner.rotation. That way, the objects are always going to be facing the same direction, and they're going to be moving inside the same direction as well. We also want to make the object move towards the player. So we want to say spawn.transform.position.x, and we want to say minus equals, I don't know, how much should that be? Minus equals, I don't know, let's just do 1 as its current speed just to be able to see what it does. And right now it's giving us an error because it's basically, we're trying to set up a new position based on its current position, calling its base value, which is not something that we are supposed to do. So what we'll do is we're going to say this. So set new position. So we're going to create a vector 2 called new pose, which is equal to spawn.position plus, actually let's do spawn.position plus a new vector 2 of 1 or -1 and 0, like so. Let's see if that'll work. Let's see. Okay, so it's, okay. I see what you mean. We'll change it into a vector 3, whatever. All right, so now we can simply say spawn.position is equal to new pose. So put put that in there. And now we should be able to constantly move our object. All right, so to test this out, we're going to simply call the spawn obj every couple frames. So up here inside the update function, actually no, we'll do this inside the void start function. So void start, we're going to then say invoke repeating, and we're going to simply call that function. So we're going to do spawn obj, and we're going to do this for the first one. We're going to do a time of 1 second, and then for the rest of them we're going to do a time of every 0.5 seconds, like so. Actually, probably 0.75 seconds. And we can always adjust this, change this. This is just to give you guys a general idea on how this works. So I think that's all we really need for now. So let's go back over into Unity. So the first thing that we do when we get back is we need to create our resource folder. So typically speaking, you would want to put this underneath your assets folder. That way it's easier for Unity to be able to find it instead of having to go through each individual resource folder. So I'm going to go over to assets, right click, create folder, and we're going to call this resources. And don't forget the S. So resources. Then we're going to go inside here, and we need to create ourselves our object that's going to be, flying around the scene. So I'm going to go over to my textures, and I'm going to grab this crate texture that I have right here. So let's just drag it into our scene. Make sure that it's at 0, 0, 0. Great. We want to add a box collider, 2D. And we'll leave everything like that for now. We could probably adjust the height a little bit, but it's okay. So with this object, we want to be able to make sure that it matches the environment. So let's try to, change its color a little bit. There we go. That looks good. Okay, so we now have the object. So let's go ahead and find our resource folder, drag it inside here like so, then delete that object. And the next thing we need to do is go over to our game manager, and you see the object is spawn. Just make sure that you name it exactly what this is named, and then just plug it in there like so. We also want to set up this spawner. So make sure, let's actually duplicate the respawn point. So Control D. Then we're going to call this the spawner. And let's just drag it over here, drop it right there. And that should be, actually we want it off screen. So we're going to put it right here. Okay, so make sure the X position is facing right. That way our object is going to be moving left. Okay, so I like that. Grab our game manager, drop our spawner on there like so, hit Control S, and let's see what happens. It's going to be interesting. So we're going to hit play, and let's see if everything works the way it should work. You know how it happens when we do things live, guys. You know what happens. So here we go. All right, so the object did spawn. Pause it. But the object is staying in its same position. Now if we take a look at this, it's saying object reference not set to an instance of an object, so we're going to double click that. And as you can see, we're looking at this spawn, which basically is a new object that's being spawned, is not moving to its position. It's basically trying to reset constantly because they're constantly spawning new ones. So what we can do, let's do this. So instead of, we'll just instantiate the game object and then set its position. So just like so. So invoke repeating, and we want to do this every 1 second. All right, so we'll create a separate script for our movement. That way it's not going to be doing this. All right, so this shouldn't take too long. If it does, oh my god, but it shouldn't take too long. So we're going to clear all those, go over to our project, find our scripts folder. We're going to right click, create a C# script, and we're going to call this I wanted to call that collateral damage, but no, we don't want to do that. Let's call this obstacles. Yeah, obstacles, like so. And once that's done, we're going to open up Visual Studios, and we're going to set up, let's do this, boom. And since we're not actually controlling things inside of here, we might as well do this. So, comma space, we want to set up the transform as the parent, so we're going to say spawner, and quaternion.identity as the rotation. And yeah, spawner dot. Let's make sure that is correct. Dot position. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and erase those as well. Boom. And in fact, we don't even need that anymore because we're not going to be calling it. We're just going to be casting it. And there we go. Okay, so let's head back over to our obstacles, and we want to do a couple things. First off, void start. Whenever this object pops into the scene, we want to destroy this after a couple seconds. So I would assume that it would only take roughly about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do 8 seconds. So we're going to do game object, and we're going to do this after about 8 seconds. So whenever this object goes across the screen, we want it to be able to stay out there for a little bit and then automatically destroy itself so it's not building up our memory. Okay, so on void update, we're going to simply grab our transform.position. So transform, not trail render, transform.position is equal to a new vector 3. And we're going to say, let's do a private float called speed. And it is advisable to put the speed vector or speed float inside of your game manager so you can adjust it and change it over time. This way, if you want things to get harder, then you can call it from there. So you could always set this inside your game manager and then call it over here. Or set this from your game manager. It's your choice, really. But since this is a tutorial, I just want to do something that is simple and easy to work with. So we're going to set our speed to 2. And actually, let's make that a -2. Like so. Actually, no, we're going to call it a 2. So we're going to say transform.position.x minus speed multiplied by time.delta time. Then we're going to get transform.position.y. We don't need to call our z value because that's going to automatically be 0. So yeah, that should be good, I think. So I'm going to hit Control S, and yeah, I think that works. So we're going to drop that back down and make sure that we grab our crate inside of our resource folder so we can adjust and add that script onto it. Otherwise, our crate's not going to be moving anywhere, and it's going to be, embarrassing. Oh my God. So let's get back into edit mode, clear all those errors, go over to our resources folder, select our crate, like so, and we're going to add in our obstacle script. So obstacle script. So now if we press play, let's go ahead and see that happen. Listen, I know I cracked myself up. I'm sorry, guys. It's a thing. All right, so let's see what we got. Our objects are moving. Great. But obviously they're moving a little too slow. Yeah, that's terrible. Okay, let's speed things up a little bit. So we're going to put these up to about 20, I think. And let's see, do we need to do anything else? Oh, our player seems to be hopping extremely low to the ground. So we need to increase the height that the player is hopping at. So let's do that. All right, so we're going to grab this player, Close up the rigid body, close up the sprite, and open up the player. Jump force, we're going to make that like a 12. Hit play. Come on, let's make sure that it works perfectly. Yes? I say yes. That's what I'm saying. So the first thing we want to test is make sure that whenever we hit this object back here, we're going to actually respawn. There we go. So we do respawn, which is great. But our hop is still really low. So let's change our hop up to like a 25 maybe. Okay. Alright, so the gravity is still off. Alright, that makes sense. So everything is working the way we want it to, but the gravity is still terrible. So open up a rigid body. I think I adjusted this last time, but I didn't actually. Yeah, there we go. So we need that to about 35, I think, with our hop. There we go. And then set our gravity scale to about 3, I think. There we go. That's nice. All right, so we now have our infinite runner where we have obstacles coming at us. We have our background moving. Our character's able to hop and move around, which is great. The next thing we want to be able to do is, of course, add some form of sound effects and randomness to how these objects spawn. That way they're not going to be just, constantly into the same line, and it's not, boring. So we'll do that, of course, in part 3, which is, of course, we're also going to be adding the audio inside here, so that's going to be exciting. You know how audio is. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, check out some of my other videos. If you have any questions, comments about this video or any other video, feel free to leave a comment inside the comment section below. I'll be happy to read it and, of course, reply to it. Also, if you guys have any ideas for tutorials that you guys want to be able to learn, then by all means, post those inside the comment section below. I'll see you guys later. Bye.